Hi, my name is Tyler Mowry, and welcome to the Writer's Mind Podcast, episode 30. All right, wow, episode 30 already. Today, I want to talk a little bit about something that's been on my mind recently, something I've been noticing in different things I'm interested in, and that is religious symbolism and how that seems to carry over to all of these different areas of life. So recently, if you've been following this podcast, you're aware that I'm interested in Bitcoin and where I think it's going to go and what it does and all these sorts of things. And what's really interesting about it is Bitcoin is very much a cult in a lot of ways. It has a lot of the pieces of a cult, right? So it has the mysterious creator in Satoshi Nakamoto. It has the Bitcoin white paper, which is like the religious texts. It has the oncoming utopia. You know, one day Bitcoin will create the new global currency and we will enter into a phase of, economic, an economic utopia. And I was thinking a lot about this, and I was thinking about how interesting it is that it seems very religious in that sense. And I think also if you look at other successful inventions or successful companies, they really operate in some way off of these ideas. So if you look at Apple, right, Steve Jobs was not only the creator of Apple and all these different devices, he also became this cult-like figure. They talk about the cult of Mac and the cult of Apple. And you can look at Tesla today, and it's very similar, right? Elon Musk is the leader of this thing, and those who buy Teslas are part of the cult of Tesla because they have a belief in this organization, they have a belief in this product, and they have a belief in the leader of this thing. What's interesting, this also goes into other areas of life. You can even see this in sports teams, right? There is a fanaticism behind particular sports teams, and there's even an element of family passing down, being a fan of a particular sports team through generations, right? If you are a New England Patriots fan in football, then your children might also be, and their kids might also be fans of the Patriots. And it's interesting because each of these sports teams, they have their own, religious-like stories. They have stories of them beating all odds and taking victory. They have literally statues of people at the stadiums to remember when in the 1980s this sports team won this victory and it was a huge win for the sport or for the team. And you can see this all over the place. I've been to many Oklahoma Sooner football games. My family has been a fan of the Oklahoma Sooners. That's where my dad is from, Oklahoma. And I remember going to the stadium again and again and looking at these statues of different players who were exceedingly great in their time period for the Oklahoma Sooners. And you can even look at older religions. We can place Greek mythology and Roman mythology into this as well, which things that currently we don't believe in, but have very clear religious figures, and they have texts and they have stories that are key to the timeline of this particular religion. And we can see that all the way down. And what's interesting is usually what happens is we look at meaningful symbols like this, or meaningful text, meaningful stories, and then we consider that religious. Just like I'm saying now, we would say that Apple has religious elements, or Tesla has elements of religion, or Bitcoin has elements of religion, right? But I don't think that's the right way of looking at it. So I think really what's going on here is we as human beings, have a system of meaning that we use to place our beliefs in a given thing, right? Now, the reason that we consider that system to be religious is because for most people, their religion is one of the things that defined them the most about who they are as a person. So, which that makes perfect sense, because your religion should define who you are. If it is that level of a belief, it should then outflow and be a huge part of who you are. And so then these sub-level things like, enjoying a particular company's product or following a particular sports team are clearly not as important as your particular religion. Therefore, you call those sorts of things as having elements of religion. However, I think it's larger than that. So I think that we have a sort of system of meaning that we then place in different areas of our life. So we interpret and view the world through these systems of meaning. And then we have kind of a tier list of what's the most meaningful, what's the least meaningful. But really it comes down to a system of meaning, and we have essentially a symbol set for meaning, right? So in a religion, it is, there is the leader, there is the religious text, there is the important beliefs, there is the history of a given religion that creates this system of meaning, right? We use these kind of symbols and these narratives to then create the meaning for a given religion. And then we transfer this over. We look at a sports team and it has, the great coaches of this sports team, and then the players and the games that were super defining for that program, and on and on. But I really think that what we find is that stories become the bedrock of all meaning, right? Because if you look at a religion, what most religions are, especially some of the more dominant ones, for example, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, these sorts of global dominant religions, many of them have key core stories that create the core history and then also some of the core elements of the morality of that particular religion. And so I think what we find is we are trying to assign meaning constantly to all these different areas of our life. And really what we're trying to do is assign belief to things. And so what happens is when you enter into, you're going to buy a product, you're going to use a service, you like or don't like a particular company, what you're really liking or not liking is the beliefs behind that company, what that company is saying about the world, and what that company is saying about you as you are being their customer. I mean, this is part of the reason we're seeing this whole widespread shift of people being very interested in what a particular company is doing outside of just selling products, right? Like you will see, a company is selling t-shirts, for example, and then they're like, 10% of our profits go to helping save the whales or help clean up trash in a given city or whatever. And what I think is interesting is that's almost like the laziest way to do it, right? Because rather than taking the time to build your own leader, to build your own history, to build your own mission for the future that we can all kind of be in together, it's like, hey, give us some money and then we'll kind of go do the thing. And what I think is interesting is you watch a lot of these companies and they do okay. They don't do fantastic, but really people aren't looking to just give a little bit of money to some cause. What they want to do is be a part of a cause and they want to believe in that cause, right? So what we see in like a Tesla is it's not just about if their business model was, hey, here's a car, and then we'll also donate 25% of the money you paid for this car to solar power, people would have a much less desire to be a part of it because it's just sort of a donation rather than being in a group that has similar beliefs to you. So it's like by buying a Tesla, you believe you are helping the environment, or you believe you are a part of the people that understand where the future is going, right? It gives you an identity. And that's really what people are looking for. They're not necessarily looking to give their money to something as much as they're looking for an identity. And because they want to say, I am the kind of person that is this. Or I am the kind of person that believes in this kind of world. Bitcoin is the same way, right? If the idea is that this is going to become a global currency that cuts out centralized governments and banks and all the shady things that they do, the idea is that it's going to become this egalitarian invention that will then, lift people out of poverty and create a more fair system across the world. Like, that is the concept of it. And so then it's like, okay, by buying this, you are believing that this is the way we should go forward. You have a belief in the future based upon something you're doing right now. And so if you think about it, what we really want is the stories that are meaningful, that gives us an idea of where we should go. And so I think when you start to see that, the reason for all of this, the reason I'm saying all of this, is because when you start to see that it's not religious symbolism, it is people looking for meaning and meaningful symbolism. And I'm not saying that negates religion at all. I think religion is a huge part of our symbolism. It's our trying to understand metaphysical symbolism and us trying to find out how do we get closer to, why we're here and what created us. And so this is not a negation of that. It's a understanding of how that fits in with our generalized view of the world and our generalized view of meaning and of storytelling. And so what we're trying to do is, build that. We're trying to answer the question, what is the best way to live? What is the meaning of life? And we do that constantly. It's not just in our religion, it is in our constant day-to-day. Because you are trying to find what is the best way to live, how best should you exist in this world. When you buy a particular product, when you support a particular movement, when you do a particular thing every day, what are you saying about how life should be lived? And I think what most people do is they do this unconsciously. And I think what happens is people are doing this unconsciously and they don't realize that they're constantly doing this. And so then when I come in and I tell them, hey, here's how stories work, they work from a philosophical level and then move up from there. And your characters have beliefs, which then have actions. They say, oh, that doesn't matter. All you need is a concept and some good structure. And that's what a story is. It's like, well, no, but the reason you're thinking that is because you're not aware of the unconscious things that you're doing every day that are pointing you in the direction of what is the best way to live and how should you best live and how do your unconscious beliefs affect your conscious actions. So you as a critical thinking writer, the idea is to cut away a lot of this fat and realize that what you're doing every day is assigning meaning to things and trying to figure out what is the best way to live. And then you can start thinking critically about what is the best way to live. And so that allows you to then come back and say, okay, let me start to dissect the things I believe, whether that's politically, religiously, economically, all of these sort of different beliefs. And then you can start to pull away your own morality and start to really dissect what do you believe for you. And I think that's where, one, you become a more interesting person, and two, you become a more interesting writer. And so we are not really, because if you think about a religion, right? We think about what is a cult and what is a religion. So a cult is a group of people believing in something very strongly that they dedicate their lives to it, and it ends up being incorrect, right? But if you look at religions, if they're not all correct, which a lot of them have contradictory things, and a lot of them would say to be a part of this religion, you have to negate the other ones. So that means that theoretically, everything is a cult except one religion, which would mean all religions are cults except one, which would mean that the only difference between a religion and a cult is whether or not it's true, right? So what you realize when you think about it in that way is cults are just people that believe in something strongly, and so are religions. And so then now we're just arguing about what is the actual truth, and that's something that we can't truly know, at least so far in life. And so what that can do is kind of like give you this like, oh, are you saying, like, what are you saying about religion? Are you saying that like religion is bad or anything like this? No. What I'm saying is this allows you to realize that cults and religions and businesses and all of these different things and political organizations all operate on this same core idea. They are operating off of stories that show us what the meaning in life should be and how we can apply that to the future, and how your actions today are impacted by the beliefs that you hold, and then how that places you into the future. So when you donate to a particular organization, or you work for a particular company, or you go to a particular church or a mosque or temple, you are making a statement about how life should be lived. And I think it's important to realize that we can find these patterns that we can see in all these different areas of life, and those are our patterns of meaning. So even think about this. You following this podcast is you saying, okay, Tyler has an idea that is helpful to me right now about how life should be lived, right? I'm talking about critical thinking in this podcast. I'm talking about how to develop your mind. I'm talking about what you write about outside of just examining structure again and again, until your brain rots. And so you are following this and you are saying, okay, this is helping me develop in a particular direction. And so, of course, while this is nowhere near some of these other things that I've talked about, it fractals down. It is the same concept. So you're following that concept in so many different areas of your life. And that goes from you being one of the few people inside of the Patreon currently, all the way up to the billions of people that follow a particular religion. Conceptually, it follows the same path. You are following ideas that you believe will show you how to best live. So what I'm really trying to tell you is that we're a cult now. Welcome. I'm hoping you're having fun. I'll make sure not to go crazy until later on. You probably won't get warning. That's how it works. I'm not going to warn you when I'm going to go crazy. We are going to start wearing robes. Please order your robe pretty soon. I'm going to order mine. And I'm also going to try and grow a beard. We'll see how it goes. But you can, whoever has the longest beard gets to be an elder. So just letting you know now. So start growing. If you already have a head start, great. You have a head start on being an elder. But hopefully this makes sense to you, right? Like, ultimately, the focus is not a religion or a business or a ideological system. The focus is first understanding how meaning and belief and action are integrated, and then how the reason that stories are so important for us as human beings is because stories are integrating meaning, belief, and action in this like small little spot. This momentary timeline that we can see, this sort of fake world that we set up to tell ourselves about ourselves, and it helps us kind of move forward. And so we use this in all sorts of different things. So once you understand and can dissect the idea that it's kind of this meaning, belief, and actions based upon that idea, it starts to color the rest of your world. It starts to color how you write, it starts to color what you believe in, and it also starts to help you be a more critical thinker and be able to say, okay, here's what's happening when I'm interacting with a particular ideology or political individual or religious individual or guy with a podcast. And I think it's it is fun to believe in things, right? What's interesting too is when you look at certain things that so look at like video games, for example, right? You might say, oh, people playing a particular video game doesn't really say anything about their life or whatever. But really what happens is when you see people put a ton of time into a particular video game, they are talking about how they believe life should be lived. They believe that that this is a great way to spend their time, that hanging out with their friends or being inside of this world is a good way to spend their time. And you can actually watch people build entire cultures and economies and all these sorts of things inside of these worlds because they make it their world, and they say, this is what I want to do. I believe in this. I believe in building this. This is enjoyable to me. I believe in, whatever. And you can go to different, I'm sure that if you go on YouTube or you go around the internet, you can find points where people were playing games and like communities banded together to do a particular thing, or you had organizations form within games and stuff, because we are looking for that community and that belief. That is what we're constantly trying to find, is we're trying to find the system we can get behind and people who share the same idea. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so I think people kind of hate on other people's politics or other people's religions and these sorts of things. And while there is a ton of discussion to be had on that, everyone is trying to figure out how best they should live. I think what happens is people just get off track, whatever. And I'm not saying that I'm on track, but people get on a different track than you, for example, or me, and then that becomes frustrating, and then that's how, you create enemies or dissidents or people you disagree with, and on and on and on. So hopefully that makes sense to you. I am really fascinated by this idea because I think the more that we can get meta and examine not only what we're doing and what we believe in, but how belief as a concept works, the better we become as thinkers and as storytellers. So I hope you found that valuable today, and I'll see you guys next week.